Hello and welcome back to another episode. And in this one, we are taking a look at this beat up mini PC. This is the HP T505. It's one of the mini PCs that I couldn't really find on Parky Towers or any information, so it's probably not as well documented. And this obviously has a big hole in the front. I'll talk about it later. But this is actually quite unique. It's from the early days of Intel Atom. I don't know why whoever sold it to me had this funny looking sticker on the power button. Maybe it's just to, maybe the power button is loose and it's just to hold it in place, or however, yeah, let's take a look at the specs and then we'll talk about this hole and all of that stuff. So for the specs, I had to download um, the product guide or something like that from HP, and this is like their what is this document even called? Their troubleshooting guide. So this is the only thing that I could find any sort of specs on it. Obviously, you could boot it up and see what there is inside. So as you can see, it's powered by an Intel Atom D505. It has a PCH NM10 chipset, DDR3 SODIMM, one socket up to 2 GB. So it is DDR3, but it is still limited to 2 GB. I don't know how that works. And so with such low memory count, sometimes you need to be specific. I have another board where it has the same limitation where it won't take 1 hour 16 or 2 hour 8 SODIMMs, and so you have to buy a specific configuration of the 2 GB DDR3 SODIMM when you're upgrading your or changing the memory on your um, box. So let's take a look at the IO. At the front, you have two USB 2s, an audio and headphone jack, power button here, and the HP logo, nothing else. At the back, you have um, that's the right way around. Gigabit Ethernet, two USB 2s. I have the keyboard and mouse plugged in. Four serial ports, a parallel port, VGA, no HDMI, no DVI, PS2 for mouse and keyboard, and your 19-volt socket, which actually requires a adapter similar to this. For serial ports is interesting. I'm guessing this is more point of sales side of things, where you will have your thermal printer on one, your barcode scanner on one, couple other things on the other, and then VGA for your display and parallel port for a larger printer or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty common in industrial or point of sale systems to have these many number of serial ports directly broken out at the back of the system. So as a size comparison, as always, there's a Dell 5010, so just a little bit taller, not by much. So works out to be a fairly uh, small box. So talking about this hole, it doesn't ship like this. Someone actually drilled a hole out on the metal casing, and then I'll open it up to show how that looks like. So from the back side, you can clearly see that it was like cut out from here, and then someone had stuck a fan on it. Now the Atom D525 that's on here with such a big heatsink should not require a fan and does not require a fan. I don't know why that person did such a mod. It really, in my benchmarks, it never heated up that bad. Although I do have I have a habit of whenever I buy old hardware like this, I do re-thermal paste everything. Just give it a good clean, at least for remove the old thermal paste at a minimum. And so it could be that the thermal paste dried up and it was heating, but adding a fan is no solution to that. It will still keep heating and still perform poorly. But here we are. That's what they did, and yeah. Right. So it has few interesting things going on. There's a SATA DOM port here, but the thing with this SATA DOM port is actually that it's vertical. So if I bring this closer, you can see that the SATA DOM is at goes straight up. So you only have height for about a centimeter or two worth of PCB for our DOM module. It's also little bit broken, but seems to work fine. So I had to use this 90-degree connector to actually connect this SSD onto the board itself. Apart from that, you have a 44-pin IDE. That's your PCH, that's your SoC. RAM, we'll take a look at the RAM and all that stuff. But more interestingly, there are a bunch of headers here right next to the serial port. And it turns out that this box actually has the ability to do to set up different serial configurations directly on the motherboard, so you don't have to control it from software. So you can set your baud rate, your stop bit, start bit, your flow control, and all of that stuff directly from here, rather than having to play around that in software and having to control it that way. The RTC clock header is there. Uh, and there's not much else. So all of this is just to control all the four serial ports. All right, so let's take a quick look at the memory stick I have installed. As they said, 1 hour by 16 and 2 hour by 8 aren't supported. Luckily, this particular stick worked well for me. So it is 2 hour by 8 and not 2 hour by 16. Wait, didn't they say 2 hour by 8 is not supported? And this is 2 hour by 8. So apparently it worked, or did I read it wrong? But anyways, that's the DDR3 stick. Let's see if it actually. Yeah, 2 hour by 8 sodiums are not supported. That's like HP's official documentation. And this is a 2 hour by 8 sodium that works just fine. Yeah, manufacturers th- just just say anything they want. And then people ask me why I don't trust data sheets. Okay, how? Right, that's in. Let's take out the sock and the PCH and take a look at what's inside. All right, so I've cleaned them as much as I can, and if you take a look at the SoC, the Intel Atom, there's not much marking on it, so not really worth showing. It's just a blob of silicon right there. On the PCH there are some markings, and so um, this is sort of akin to the Intel 945 GC, but this is clearly the CG28NM10. Sorry, CG82NM10, and that's the equivalent um, for the Intel Atom series of this generation. And yeah, integrated graphics and other I/O peripherals control, and then the memory controller clearly is on the SoC itself. You can see the traces going everywhere. So let's reassemble it. There's not much else on the motherboard itself. Let's reassemble it and power it up and see how it looks. So it's going to be through VGA. The quality is going to be great because I have to convert it to HDMI in order to capture this, blah blah blah. So yeah, we'll see, and we'll see about the performance. So let's put it all back together. All right, let's power it up and see how it goes. So it's booted up, and let's look at the BIOS itself. So a very old school looking BIOS utility. It's obviously not UEFI. So in system information, you can see all 2 gigs of RAM is working. As I said, it's labeled as 2R by 8, working fine. And there's not much to say. You have 2 hard drives, primary and secondary. So both SATA and that IDE port are on the same IDE controller. Um, there's just generic things. You can set all the 4 serial port IRQs, blah blah blah. Nothing out of the ordinary. And then you have your BIOS password and everything on the other side. So let's exit and boot into Debian. So it's booted into Debian. As you can see, the resolution is a fair bit lower, and it's probably because of the limitations of VGA and the Intel chipset GPU. It's very similar to the 945G chipset on socket 775, and I think it's a derivative. I don't know for sure. So let's see what LS CPU shows us. So Intel Atom D525 at 1.8 gigahertz. That is its maximum clock. There's no boost or anything like that. There's 2 cores and it's hyper-threaded, so 2 threads per core. So it's not a physical quad core. It's hyper-threaded, and you can see it's not affected by any CPU vulnerabilities. It's really old. It's also possible that those vulnerabilities exist in the CPU. They're just not mapped to its CPU ID. But I think all of that's pretty sorted out, so that shouldn't be the case. GL Mark II just shows it as an Intel GPU, i915, so Pineview G chipset. Doesn't really mean a whole lot, but that's what it is. Let's take a look at the Phoronix test suite benchmark numbers and compare to the other mini PCs. Alright, things have started to get a bit crowded. Let's see where we are. HP T505 is this pink one here, so it's a bit all over the place in terms of comparison. So we'll just go one by one and see where it stands. On GL Mark II, it's not as fast, but it's still faster than the ATI something or the other based RX0L, but it's not faster than any of the other GPUs we've tested, the Radeon HD ones and the Intel HD one. Tiny membench, it's not the fastest, it's at 1.8, 1.9 gigabytes a second, so somewhere similar to ZX0. Again, not taking the full capability of the DDR3 bandwidth it has available, but it's also very slow cores. Same on the second tiny membench benchmark. GMP bench, it's the slowest. So though these cores are really not that powerful, it has one of the worst performance numbers in this chart. X264 does a little bit better because of the extra cores and hyperthreading over the other AMD based platforms, but compared to the Celeron J1900, it's still lacking quite a bit. In fact, it's very close to the 5010 and ZX0, even though they don't have hyperthreading. So comparable, but Darktable, it's again very close to 5010 in terms of performance, and that's across all of the Darktable benchmarks. Selenium it performs the worst here across all of the boards, all of the mini PCs we've tested so far. That's only on Aries 6. On speedometer is very close to RX0L. So that's about it for the HP 5T505. It is mediocre, but it's interesting to say one of the earlier Intel Atom platforms, not the 32-bit Intel Atom, but earlier 64-bit Intel Atom platforms in action. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.